Welcome to 2016 presidential candidate interviews. Today I'm interviewing Sam Sloan.
Okay.
He's running as a Democrat. Hello, Mr. Sloan, and welcome to the interview.
Yeah, hello.
How are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing fine.
Good. Let's give the listeners a chance to know you, an opportunity to get to know you, and I'll ask you some simple icebreaker questions. Describe your family.
Okay. Well, I'm actually divorced now. I have 8 children. Been married a couple of times, and now I'm staying with my girlfriend.
Describe your employment and your work experience.
Oh, I used to be the principal of a securities firm, a registered broker-dealer, and then I had a long history of litigation with the Securities Exchange Commission. I eventually won the case, but they kicked me out of the securities business. They didn't like me. And so now I'm then I work for a stockholder proxy firm involved in soliciting proxies and small stockholder buybacks. And then tender offers by small companies that wanted to buy their own stock back. And then I've finally now I'm in a book publisher. I reprint old out-of-print books. I take old print books that mostly are published before 1950 that I determine are in public domain, and if I think there's still a market for them, I reprint them. So I've now reprinted over 665 books, and I reprint an average of 2 books per week. And they're all available, by the way. You can find them all on Amazon, on BarnesandNoble.com, on almost every bookstore in the world carries my books now.
Great. It's an important resource. What are your hobbies and interests?
Well, I play chess. I play tournament chess, and I've never been able to win enough money to be a professional chess player, but I've always been a chess enthusiast.
Do you have any favorite restaurants to eat out at?
No, I rarely leave the house. I work all the time on my different projects. I don't go out very much.
Okay. Any fast food joints you like?
No.
Okay.
No, never.
Favorite junk food?
No, nothing.
Any favorite TV shows and movies?
I very rarely watch television.
Any pets?
Any pets?
Yes.
No, I don't have any pets.
Do you have a song that you might consider a life anthem or a motto or something that represents who you are?
No. Sorry.
All right. Well, let's get right into the substantive, serious-minded questions. Why are you running for president?
I decided to run because I'm a sort of a mixture. I'm neither a traditional Democrat nor a traditional Republican. I tried to run as a Republican, but now I realize I can't be a Republican because the Republicans actually want to restart a whole bunch of wars. In fact, if you look on an interview by John McCain, who was previously a Republican nominee for president, he wants to start bombing Iran. He wants to bomb Iraq. He wants to bomb Syria. He wants to bomb just about every place in the Middle East. And he's really the spokesman for the Republican Party. He's not just a former candidate. He basically speaks on behalf of almost all the Republicans. So I mean, the idea of going out and starting a whole bunch of new wars. He even wants to challenge the Russians because they're bombing Syria now, and we're also bombing Syria, but they're bombing the people that don't like them in Syria, and we're bombing the people who don't like us in Syria. So both Russia and America are bombing Syria at the same time. And he wants us to confront the Russian airplanes and chase them out and not let them drop bombs in Syria. In other words, he's basically willing to risk a new World War III. And I haven't seen any Republican talking against this. He's basically speaking for the Republican Party. So it's out of the question for me to be a Republican candidate anymore. It's completely just, because one thing for sure, I've been to all these places. I've been to Iran, I've been to Afghanistan. I've traveled extensively through the Middle East, and these people have their problems, but the solution to the problem is not to drop bombs on them all the time. So that makes I have to be a Democrat. And over on the Democrat side, Well, it's perfectly obvious. I thought, and everybody else thought, that Hillary Clinton was going to be the nominee, but now it's starting to look like she's in serious trouble. I'm not against her. As a matter of fact, I'm on her side on most of the key issues. For example, the Iran deal, where we're going to unfreeze their bank account, provided that they can prove that they're not developing a nuclear bomb. That's a good deal. That's the best deal we're ever going to get, and we should accept that deal. And I'm pretty much upset that the Republicans are kowtowing to foreign powers. Iran is no threat to the United States of America. They're not going to attack us. They're not going to send amphibious landing boats to land in Queens, or something, take over the country. They have their own religious prerogatives, and they follow their own beliefs. But we should just stay out of that. It's terribly unfortunate, by the way. I've read the news reports. I'm sure you've read them too, about how in northern Iraq, the ISI they're capturing children. They're actually taking children, and they're killing all the boys or making them become their own soldiers, and they're raping all the girls and killing the girls. And I mean, it's just horrible what's going on over there. But unfortunately, the reality is, for us to go and send our troops over there and fight these people, it's just not going to work out. And by the way, I have two sons in the military. I have a son in the United States Marines and a son in the United States Army, and I have a daughter who completed 4 years and also served in the war in Iraq, who served 4 years in the Marines. So I have three of my children in the military, and I had three of my uncles in the front lines of World War II and in the Korean War. So my family has been involved in all these wars, and they just don't accomplish anything. We lost a lot of our young men in the war in Iraq, and that war accomplished absolutely nothing, zero benefit from that war. So we just have to stop getting involved in all these wars. We basically should bring our troops home. We should not be involved in fighting all over the world and trying to prove our point, whatever it is, So that's the reason why. Nobody else, by the way, is saying that. The reason why they don't say that, and I'm sure many of them believe that, but they don't say that because, they're being confronted by the right and the left and so on. So we have to, for our national security, we got to have our national security. We got to start bombing all these people in Iraq because that protects our national security. I don't understand what these people are talking about. Our national security is not based on anything that happens in Iraq. The Iraqis are not going to come over and attack us here, and so we just have to let them stew in their own juice. We just can't be the policemen of the world. So that's basically what I feel about that subject.
Alrighty. Next question: what abilities would you bring to the office of president?
Well, I'm a very well-read person. I published 665 books. I won a case in the United States Supreme Court in 1978. I'm the last non-lawyer ever to argue a case orally before the United States Supreme Court. As a matter of fact, they passed a rule about a year ago. They passed a rule which makes it impossible for anybody to do again whatever I did. I've been to 78 countries in the world. I'm a very accomplished person in a variety of fields. By the way, I'm also a chess master. Well, actually, my rating has fallen below master lately, but I am I have been in the past a chess master. So I'm a capable person, and I think I can do a better job than anybody else running. And most of these people who are running are, it's funny. By the way, there's a funny thing I noticed about politicians. Most politicians actually could not get another job. They become politicians because nobody would ever hire them. And who would really give a job to any of these people, basically,
Name a president or two who you have a favorable opinion of, who have aspects of their presidency you would want to emulate.
Well, the most recent good president we've had was President Clinton. He's by far the best president we've had in quite a long time. If you want to go a good president before Clinton, I can't think of one offhand. We now tend to have a favorable view of. We tend to think that Eisenhower was a good president, but at the time he was actually president, people thought he was terrible. But now we look back in the past and what happened after him. Eisenhower seems like a pretty good president. Kennedy, by the way, was not a good president. I've written, I've edited a book about Kennedy. Actually, it was by his mistress, Judith Exner. I reprinted one of her books, and And I was disturbed to learn a lot of very negative things about the Kennedy presidency. So I simply can't agree that Kennedy was a good president. And I probably know more about what actually happened while Kennedy was president than just about anybody else. Since I wrote a book about it, I should know a lot about that subject.
Okay.
So if you want to go before, Ronald Reagan was a great speaker, but he was a terrible president. So many of our people who are admired today by the general public, they haven't actually studied what really happened during these people's presidency. They just have a good, reputation, and maybe they had a nice appearance, or whatever it is, but they weren't really very good.
Okay. Next question, it's about government and abolishing things. Are there any functions of government you would like to decrease or abolish?
Well, naturally, I want to do what everybody wants to do, or what say they want to do, is reduce taxes and reduce spending. We simply spend too much money on things which are not accomplishing anything. We have our military is bloated. They have actually decreased a lot of the military bases, so there's been some progress in that area. But mainly, we have to reduce taxes. We have to reduce government regulations. And we have to basically cut down the size of the government. This is what it boils down to. The problem is that everybody agrees to that in principle. They all say, "Oh, let's reduce the size of the government," but they always want to reduce the other guy's size of the government. Mr. A wants to reduce whatever benefits B, and Mr. B wants to reduce whatever benefits A. So I want to reduce the whole size of the government. And basically, one of the big things is what I just told you. We should stop fighting all these foreign wars over in Iraq, Afghanistan, and places. Oh, by the way, I want to mention one of my abilities. I happen to speak 15 languages, and I speak the 2 languages of Afghanistan. I was over there. I'm quite familiar with the politics of those situations over there. But one thing I know, the bottom line is, we're not going to accomplish anything over there. It's just one, getting our own guys killed, and doesn't recover any progress. But nobody's better off because of our involvement over in those countries. Look at all the money we spent in Iraq, and look at what the benefit is. Nothing came good out of it. And by the way, did you notice that one of the candidates in the last debate, on the CNN debate, said, talking about another candidate, said, "He kept us safe," and everybody applauded. "Oh, he kept us safe." But by the way, look at tens of thousands of young American soldiers were killed over there. How do he keep those guys safe? They're dead now.
Well,
so they weren't safe. My own daughter was over there. What?
3,000 Americans died while he was president, too, in America, so it's kind of...
Right. So how did he keep us safe, I mean, it's just disgusting that a guy would actually say that he kept us safe. Right. And that's why I think he's down to 4% in the polls now. Where it was about 20% at one point before.
Next question: are there any functions of government you would like to add to or increase? Is there anything that doesn't exist that you think should exist?
No, I can't think of anything that we need to do more. We're already doing too much of too many different things. I can't think of a single area of government that we need to be more active in. I do. By the way, I was married to a woman from Pakistan. We have a baby, and the place where she is from is flooded over there. Their whole bridges and shops and buildings have been washed away by the floods. Just like we're having floods here. I guess there are floods all over the world going on. It's not only there. I mean, there's many countries of the world which are being flooded. It's pretty remarkable that this thing in South Carolina and now in Afghanistan they're flooding, in India they're flooding, and so on and so forth. I would like to see us do more to help those people over there, but it's a limit to what we can do in the other side of the world, basically, and it's terribly unfortunate. And we could do more building roads. Another thing, if you study the map, another subject I've often been interested in. Do you realize there's no road that connects the Republic of Panama to Colombia? Did you know that, by the way?
I did not know that.
You didn't know that. You cannot take a road. You cannot go by road from Panama to Colombia. They're neighboring countries, of course. Well, the reason why there's no road obviously it's a jungle and a swamp down there, but nevertheless, if they spent the money, they could build a road. It's controlled by guerrillas and it's controlled by groups that are fighting against the governments. And basically, this has been the situation for a long time. Nixon tried to build a road down there, by the way. It's been tried before, And the Darien, it's actually the place where, it's actually the same place where they don't have a road now, is the place where Magellan discovered the Pacific Ocean. Balboa, excuse me. Balboa discovered the Pacific Ocean right at the exact place. The Darien area is where the Pacific Ocean was discovered, so it could be crossed because Balboa crossed that exact spot. But we should try to build a road down there, but of course we don't because those countries are basically unstable. Panama, especially Colombia, they're controlled by the drugs cartels. Oh, by the way, that's another thing we hadn't gotten to. Marijuana. I am in favor of legalizing marijuana, and I realize it's a dangerous drug. I don't doubt that people hallucinate and stuff like that. Marijuana. Very, very few people die from marijuana, though. It doesn't actually kill anybody. It maybe messes people up emotionally and so on and so forth, but it doesn't kill them. But the reason is because the marijuana trade is controlled by the drug lords in Mexico, especially. Tens of thousands of people have been killed in fights between the different cartels and so on, and they're all fighting over marijuana because we don't really in America. When I say we, in America, we don't really use much in the way of heroin or cocaine or these other drugs, but marijuana is the one which is popular. So that's where the money is. If we can legalize marijuana, they'll stop fighting over it because if there won't be any money to be made selling it, just like during the Prohibition era, all the mafia started taking over the gang wars, Al Capone and people like that. They were controlling the distribution of alcohol because alcohol was illegal. As soon as alcohol was made legal again and Prohibition was defeated, they stopped fighting over alcohol, because there was no money to be made in it. And marijuana is the same thing. They're having huge wars and gangs and so on of marijuana. Now another thing about the illegal alien problem. And by the way, I have actually walked across the border myself from Mexico to America. I wanted to see what it was like, so I got out on the road and walked across the border. Not the legal way. I didn't go to the border checkpoints. I speak, by the way, Spanish almost fluently. I can get along with Spanish pretty well. I actually tried that. I wanted to see what would happen, so I did this several times. I actually went over to the Mexico side and walked across the border into America to see if the border patrol would stop me. The border was pretty much open, but we do have to somehow or another stop these people coming across. By the way, I live in an immigrant neighborhood, and my neighborhood, almost everybody here speaks Spanish. There are a few English speakers, but most of them are Spanish speakers where I live. And it's just, and some of my neighbors actually did come to America illegally by crossing the border from Mexico, and they're here and they're working and they have good jobs and so on and so forth. And they're contributing to our society. So the idea of just arresting all these people and sending them back, it's too late for that. But we should do what we can to stop more people from coming because they're just going to keep coming again and again and again. So we have to have more security down there. But on the other hand, the people who are already here, it would be physically impossible, basically, or virtually impossible to deport 11 million people back to Mexico or wherever they came from. So, and by the way, quite a lot of them have come in the bottom of ships and things like that from China. I happen to know some people who actually came that way, and now they're American citizens and they're respectable citizens, basically.
Next topic: taxes and taxation. What is your stance and what is your approach to taxes and taxation?
Well, just the taxes should be reduced. I do think, by the way, that we have to reinstate the death tax, basically, because when people die, a handful of people are controlling huge amounts of money. They're billionaires, people with billions of dollars, and when they die, they pass their money off to the other people who will get the billions of dollars. And that's not. I think we should reinstate the estate tax. By the way, there was no estate tax. I'm not even sure the current status right now. I better look this up. But for many years there was no estate tax. When a person died, it all went to their children. Okay. Well, the problem with that is you have an elite group of people who have so much money, billions of dollars, that they never have to pay taxes for the rest of their life. And when they finally die, it'll be passed to their children, and so on and so forth. I happen to know a person who has a trust, who's a beneficiary of a trust, a friend of mine who's a beneficiary of a trust, and her great-grandfather died in 1908, right? He died in 1908, and she's getting a check every month from the trust account of this guy who was, very wealthy man who died in 1908. So this is like 107 years ago the guy died, and so this person never works. Of course, she's never had a job. What's the reason point in having a job if she's going to get a check every month, a substantial check every month from a guy who died in 1908? So this is one of the problems, and this is why we need to have an estate tax, because it just results in people not working, people not contributing to society. They just sit back and live off the check they get every month for the next 100 years.
Next topic. What is your stance on the abortion pro-choice issue?
Well, basically, I am pro-choice. But I want to tell you something that probably shouldn't mention this, but I've had 4 of my own children aborted by Planned Parenthood. So I'm not happy about that. So I have a personal problem with this, with these abortions. That basically any woman who gets pregnant, she decides she changes her mind, it goes down and has the baby killed. So I'm not happy about that. But unfortunately, there are just too many people in the world, and there has to be abortion has to be allowed, and so it's not going to change. Roe versus Wade is not going to be overturned. So that's what I think about that. Well, by the way, did I mention I have 8 children? I think I mentioned that.
Yes. How do you perceive the issue of race and discrimination in America?
Well, frankly, I think it's overemphasized. I think the racial minorities do have had a problem, but we all have problems. Nobody has such a perfect life. Even, like, for example, I happen to be Irish. When the Irish came to America, we were discriminated against. So nowadays nobody discriminates against Irish. I just think it's too much is being talked about this. I don't like the idea of this. It's unfortunate that there have been several shootings in places like Ferguson, Missouri. The most famous case actually happened right in my neighborhood. Amador Diallo. You remember that one? That was a few years ago.
Yes.
The guy was shot. The police, they thought he looked like a black man who had some burglaries recently. And when they went to arrest him, he reached to his wallet apparently to bring out his ID, and the police shot him 17 times. I don't know if you remember that incident. That was a few years ago. I mean, the guy wasn't. Some of these other cases, they did have reason. Like the guy in Staten Island, who had just gotten out of jail. He was just gotten out of jail a few hours before. He was in jail for selling loose cigarettes without paying the taxes. And so when the police went to arrest him, he gave him some lip about them arresting him again, since he just gotten out of jail, that same day. And they grabbed him from behind. It's unfortunate that he died. So it's terrible these things happen. But he was in fact resisting arrest. Then there's another guy you can see on video. The guy was running away, and he just took off and ran, and the police shot him as he was running away. These conditions are all very unfortunate. But the case of Amador Diallo was a guy who was there. He wasn't running away. He was actually in front of his house. He was front of the building where he lived. And the police wanted to ask him questions, and unfortunately, when he reached for his wallet, they thought he was reaching for a gun, so they shot him 17 times. Unfortunately, these things happen. They tend to happen right where I live, by the way, because I happen to live in immigrant neighborhood, and the guy who was that shot 17 times, he was from the Republic of Mali in Africa, so he was an immigrant too. It's terrible these things happen.
Next question, different topic. What role should the federal government play in healthcare?
What should we do in healthcare?
Correct, the federal government.
Unfortunately, people haven't been paying attention. Obamacare is not a success. Because, remember when Obamacare came out, it said everybody was going to get Obamacare. 100% of the population was going to have Obamacare. And if you didn't want Obamacare, you would have to pay a fine, right? That was the original promise of Obamacare. Well, that hasn't happened. 100% of the people do not have Obamacare. There are no fines being rendered against people who didn't pay for Obamacare. There are all kinds of conflicting claims about how much it costs, whether it's cheaper or more expensive. Or there are people who get Obamacare who could not get insurance before. For example, it's sort of strange to point this out. My own girlfriend has Obamacare. For example, my girlfriend she has Obamacare. But on the other, and prostitutes, by the way, you don't think that of this as a discriminating minority, but prostitutes can get Obamacare because they were uninsurable. Nobody's going to give insurance to a prostitute. But now because of Obamacare, they are able to get automatically get insurance. And so there are groups like that who are in risky professions and are able to get insurance that they couldn't get otherwise. So that's a good thing. But it has not fulfilled its promise. Now the question is what to do about it. We can't just cancel it. There are people depending on it. For example, I just gave you an example. My girlfriend has Obamacare. What do we do? This is such a difficult problem. I just don't really have a solution that I can pull out of the hat on this.
Okay. We can move on to another question.
Okay.
What should the role of the federal government be in maintaining infrastructure, roads, bridges, power grids, internet access, things along those lines?
Oh, well, definitely. We have to, roads, bridges. The government has to do that because simply nobody has enough money. I know that there are extreme, right wingers who say that the bridges and the tunnels and the highways should be maintained by private businesses. Well, that's just not practical. And this is one area that the government has to be involved in is the maintaining the trains, the buses, and so on and so forth. There's no other way to do it. Well, some buses are able to operate at a profit, but in general, they can't. They need backing up. Now, one thing that's been an issue about is about the unions that control like for example, we had a big subway strike here in New York City. We had a subway strike in 2004. The union shut down the subway. The subway workers union is a Taylor law prohibits them from striking. I just had a debate with somebody on this subject yesterday, a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine. We debated the subject, and they said, well, the unions, they want better working conditions, and they want more safety, and they don't want to endanger the people, and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, regardless of how we look at it, we simply cannot have a union be so powerful that it can shut down the whole subway system. You realize what a terrible situation was in New York City? It was only a few days. This particular subway strike was over in just a few days, whereas previous subway strikes had lasted a long time, weeks, But this particular subway strike was over pretty fast. Mayor Bloomberg managed to negotiate a settlement, and then the union was given a sweetheart deal, an excellent deal, pay raises for everybody, just a wonderful deal, and then the union voted it down. They wanted more than they got, and so what happens is they voted down this great deal that we're offered, and they've never been offered another deal since then, and they're just working without a contract basically. But unfortunately, we have to. There's one good thing that Ronald Reagan did. I think most people, but not all people. I had a debate with this yesterday. Was when the air traffic controllers struck and they shut down the whole airlines. There were no airplanes was able to fly in the United States of America. The whole airline system was closed down, and he settled that by simply firing the air traffic controllers. That was the only way out of that. They simply could not give all these people raises and so on and so forth. It was just impossible. That's the one thing that he had to do, that he had to do, and almost everybody agrees, except for the guy I was debating the subject with yesterday. They said, "Oh no, these people were they were want more safety measures and so on and so forth. They were trying to keep the people safe and so on and so forth." But unfortunately, you just can't have a situation where a group of people who want more money can shut down the trains, or can shut down the airlines, can shut down everything. By the way, this happens over in England. I was over in England when they had the strike over there, the trucker strike. I happened to be driving down the road in England. I was over in England in 1999, and the Prime Minister of England was on the radio saying, "There's plenty of gas in England. There's no way that they're going to shut down the gas stations. There's no chance of this happening. We've got lots of gas." And then after listening to the Prime Minister of England saying how much gas we had, my own car that I was driving ran out of gas, started running low, and I pulled into a gas station, and they said, "We don't have any gas." And so then I went to another gas station. "Well, we don't have any gas either." Went to the third station. "They don't have any gas either." And pretty soon I found out that nobody in the whole country had gas. Here. So we got the Prime Minister of England on the radio saying everybody's got plenty of gas, and there's no gas in the whole country. All completely shut down. Now, we simply can't allow that to happen in America. We can't have these unions taking over and trying to get more money by shutting down the whole economy. It just can't happen. We can't allow it. And the conflict of interest there is that the workers, in these unions, they are also voters. So when they want more money, they're basically, and the voters are the ones who make the decisions. So when the unions ask for money, they're basically asking themselves for more money, and that's a conflict of interest. That's what happened with Scott Walker became a national hero. Unfortunately, he didn't follow up on other things. He didn't have other things going on for him, so he dropped out of the presidential race. So as you see, by the way, on some of these issues, I do cross party lines. I do say things that some Republicans are saying, and I say some things that some Democrats are saying. So I'm a mixture of both. I don't have any doctrinaire philosophy that I follow. I have my own ideas about almost everything.
All right, let's move to another question. This is about personal liberty and gathering intelligence to fight terror. Some people think there's a conflict of interest between gathering intelligence to fight terrorists and maintaining personal liberties like freedom, privacy, and all that. Do you think there's a conflict, and how do you handle these competing issues?
Well, I think Edward Snowden is a great man, and they should erect a statue to him in Union Square. I think that'd be a good place to put a statue in honor of Edward Snowden in Union Square. Because basically what we're doing is, for example, right now we're having a telephone conversation. Now, it's highly likely that somebody's listening in on this conversation that we're having right now. What do you think? Do you think somebody's listening, or are we just having this private conversation between you and me right now?
I hope they listen once it's posted to the internet. They can listen to it all they want, but there might be. You never know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think somebody's listening to me, and I believe that probably my telephone has been tapped for years. And maybe I'm exaggerating my own importance when I think my telephone has been tapped for years. But I am careful not to say anything. You'll never hear me say anything which constitutes, federal crime. I can list a few federal crimes, but I won't do that. But I don't say anything that would be inflammatory, because I know that they're probably listening to me. I've been to Afghanistan, I've been to Iran, I've been to Russia, I've been to all these places, and so naturally, I'm a person that they look at, that they watch. So now, whether they should watch everybody and so on and so forth, there's a lot of nonsense. So many of these people who are being surveilled or so on and so forth are just average, working people. I simply don't believe that they have stopped, any terrorist bombings. That they've apprehended people. They've never been able to provide an example of anybody who was going to drop a bomb or bomb someplace and was apprehended beforehand. There have been a lot of cases in Europe. Europe is much worse than we are, because look at all the bombings that are taking place over in Europe. And those people are really under the gun all the time. But here in America, we've been relatively safe. And I simply don't believe that there's any need for all this surveillance, and also it's extremely expensive. It costs a lot of money for the government to be watching everybody.
Okay.
So I'm not in favor of it.
Okay. We're down to about 9 minutes left in the interview. Are there any other issues you would like to discuss that have not been covered?
No. By the way, I did not send you my. I wrote a campaign statement. I think I didn't send it to you by email. I can send that to you. That pretty much covers the important points. One of the issues which I happen to be particularly interested in is the issue of driver's licenses. Now, it's very hard to get a driver's license in America. You have to bring in, at least in New York, you've got to have 6 points. You've got to have all kinds of different IDs. You know, it's quite a long process to get driver's license. I would prefer to have the roads be safe. I drive a lot when I'm out. I drive quite a bit, and I want everybody else to have a driver's license. And I don't want people to be on the road driving who can't pass a test. But the reason why there are a lot of people on the road driving is because they make it so difficult to get a driver's license that no, people just don't bother. They just drive without a license and hope they don't get caught. And what they should do now, you think I'm getting to they should crack down on these people who drive without a license? No, the opposite. They should allow anybody who can pass the test. If they can pass the test, they should be allowed those people to get a driver's license. They shouldn't require 6 points of ID. They shouldn't require all these other things. Just let them come in. If they take the test, if they pass the test, you fingerprint them and make sure you got the right person and that's the real person. And then if they can pass the test, then give them the driver's license. I think that's the way to make things safe. Just like the congressional candidate who said he made it safe, by sending thousands of troops over there who all got killed. Similarly, we become safe by dropping all these rules against having a driver's license and just make sure that everybody who has one, who can pass the test, gets a license. To me, that's an important issue. I realize no other candidate, by the way, has mentioned the issue of driver's license. So this is something I'm bringing up that other people haven't mentioned.
Right. And just for some closing remarks, do you want to take 2 minutes and tell us why we should vote for you?
Well, I really think that the other people running are not very good. I mean, let's be frank about it. It's not a question that I'm so great. It's just that all the others are so bad. So that doesn't seem to be. Remember when I started off on this thing, by the way, I happen to agree with Hillary. I'm a Democrat, so I'm running against Hillary. But I happen to agree with her on most of her issues. Number one, this whole issue about the email gate. She had a right to have her own email server. And the idea is she turned her emails over to the government. Well, once the government gets the emails, then everybody gets them because we own the government and we eventually get everything. So why shouldn't she have her own private email server? The whole thing about Emailgate is just a hatchet job against her. Another issue that they're attacking her under is Benghazi. They make it sound like it's because of Hillary Clinton that the U.S. ambassador was killed in Benghazi. Well, what did Hillary Clinton have to do with it? What could she have done to stop the attack on the consulate in Benghazi? I mean, she had absolutely nothing to do with it at all. She just happened to be Secretary of State when this assault in Benghazi took place. So they're just doing a half-shit job on her. People are thinking, oh, it's terrible what happened in Benghazi. It's all Hillary Clinton's fault. She did it. It's her fault. She was the one who made it possible for those people to attack and kill those people. Well, it's just nonsense. Just utter nonsense. The thing about the email gate is total nonsense. The Benghazi scandal is total nonsense. And somebody's got to stand up and defend her. And by the way, what all that bothers me about the other Democrats, they're not saying anything about this. I mean, these are obvious points. The Iran deal is a good deal. It's the best deal we're going to get. And by the way, we're not giving any money to Iran. We're simply unfreezing their bank accounts. They've got all this money in the bank. It's their money. And they have a right to it because it's their money. And they sold oil and they got money and it's been sitting in frozen bank accounts. Now, how does that, why shouldn't these people have their own money? It's just nonsense. Why should a foreign power be able to dictate our policies about another foreign power. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense that somebody else who's not American can come in and dictate our terms of, our relationship with another country. I'm very much against that, and I don't even understand why people are speaking about, we got to defend this country, got to defend that country, got to defend. We only have one country we have to defend. That country is the United States of America. We do not need to go anywhere and defend all these other people. They can defend themselves. They got their own armed forces. They got lots of money, and they don't need to come to us and ask for handouts. So I guess that's my point.
Okay, thank you for the interview. Thank you for participating in it. Thanks to my listeners for listening. Be sure to check back in the future for more interviews. Have a good day.